Morning. My colleague, Mr. Ryerson Norris, can't be here in person today.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Jenkins.
Good morning.
Can we start with the Mismatch case study, please?
Okay.
Just for reference, no need to display it. You set out in your witness statement, your third witness statement, paragraphs 326 to 521, your involvement in Mismatch's case. And just by way of reference, before you ever became involved in it, back on the 1st of April 2008, Mr. Singh, Jarnail Singh, had advised there was sufficient evidence for a prosecution of Mrs. Misra. The reference for that, again, no need to be displayed, is poll 304-9658. Can I turn, please, to what might be your first involvement or the genesis of your first involvement in the case?
Okay.
FUJ 0015-2866, please. And if we can turn to page 6, please. An email, if we just scroll down, and a bit more. We can't, in fact, see it. We'll have to scroll up to see that it was sent from Mr. Dunks. There. Can you see an email of the 26th of November 2009 from Mr. Dunks to Jane Owen?
I think it's copied to Mr. Dunks, isn't it, from John Longman?
Oh, you're quite right. Mr. Longman to Miss Owen, copied to Mr. Dunks. You're quite right. And if we scroll down, it says, I attach a report from the defence expert where he has highlighted a number of problems with the Horizon system. Our barrister, Warwick Tatford, has asked that the problems with Horizon that he's raised in his report are replied to in a witness statement form. I presume an employee of Fujitsu would have to produce the witness statement. In addition to this, the defence have requested some information, which I'm not going to read. Okay?
Okay.
And then if we go to page 5, please, at the top of the page, we can see that Jane Owen sends that to Penny Thomas in Fujitsu on the 1st of December. This is the email and attachments we chatted about. Please let me know if there's anything else you need from me, and if this kind of request needs to be raised in a more official way, okay?
Yep.
You're not included at this stage.
Correct.
And then if we go to page 3, please. And if we just scroll up a bit more, thank you, you'll see an email from Penny Thomas to David Hind. Do you remember David Hind?
Yes, he was one of the programme managers within the post office account, and I worked quite closely with him on a number of occasions.
So he was a post office...
no, he was a Fujitsu person.
Working on the POA?
Yes.
Thank you. David, we had a conversation last week, and you advised me I should no longer ask Gareth to support our prosecution activity. I now have a request from the post office, which they'd like addressed prior to Christmas, and I need an expert to respond. Could you help me to identify a suitable candidate? And then she attaches the expert's report. Do you know anything about why you were not to be approached? Should no longer ask Gareth to support our prosecution.
Possibly because I was quite busy working on Horizon Online at the time.
Okay, so it was about capacity, was it, so far as you knew?
As far as I know, yes.
And then if we scroll up, please, at page 2. Mr. Hind replies, Penny, we've not identified anyone else who can take this on at present, so it would need to be handled by Gareth. And then scroll up. An email that we've looked at before. I think we looked at it yesterday or the day before. Which is really about generally what you do to support prosecution activity.
Yes.
So this chain doesn't actually, even though there's a request for the provision of an expert report in the form of a witness statement, or an expert's reply to the expert's report in the form of a witness statement, doesn't ask you directly to perform that function, does it, when it's sent on to you?
No, not at this stage, no.
And can you help us? Do you know why you're replying to this chain with this series of questions and answers?
The questions are from this Dave Jennings, and the answers are mine. So again, I'm interspersing things. So I think the darker font is his questions, and the lighter font, more to the left, are my responses, is how I'm interpreting that.
But my question was more, do you know why you're saying all of this in answer to the series of emails below, which is about, can we have a reply from somebody within Fujitsu in the form of a witness statement to the defence expert report in the Seema Misra case?
I don't have a clear answer. I'm assuming from what this is saying that Dave Jennings wanted to have some sort of background as to the sort of things I've done in the past, but I'm guessing from the sort of questions he's asking.
Can you recall when you were first asked to provide assistance to the Post Office in relation to Mrs. Misra's case?
I think it was from, as a consequence of this email. There may be, I think there may be a later one either on this chain or on a separate chain that actually passes me the report to have a look at, but it was certainly sometime in December 2009.
You tell us in your witness statement that you do not think that you received any kind of briefing or explanation about the background to Mrs. Misra's case. Is that right?
At that stage, I don't believe I did.
And that you weren't, in fact, provided with Professor McLachen's first interim technical report?
I don't believe I've ever seen that.
Without a briefing or explanation about the background to Mrs. Misra's case or the prosecution case against her, and without a copy of Professor McLachen's first interim report, how did that impact on your ability to respond to the Post Office's requests?
I saw the Post Office's request as being purely to comment on the second report that I was provided with, either at this time or shortly afterwards.
And so, again, performing a narrow function?
Yes, because that's what I thought I was being asked to do.
Did you ever think, hold on, I don't know anything about this case?
No, I was just being asked, please, can you comment on this report? So I commented on the report in the way that I normally did by interspersing my comments within the electronic version of the report.
You also, in your witness statement, describe the Post Office's management of Seema Misra's case. This is something you mentioned previously in your oral evidence as, quote, fairly chaotic.
Yes, I would agree with that.
What did you mean by your reference to the management by the Post Office of Mrs. Misra's case as being fairly chaotic?
I think this came a bit more later. There were a number of cases where I would respond to an email and then get asked exactly the same question again by the same person, and therefore ended up sort of saying, well, I told you this yesterday, here's the answer I gave you when you asked me the question before. And there were a number of examples of that in the exchanges I had with Jarnail Singh.
Other than receiving repeated requests for the same thing, was there anything else that made their management of the case chaotic or fairly chaotic?
I wasn't being asked very clear questions. I was having to make all sorts of assumptions of what they wanted me to do. I did try and set out what I thought I was being asked to do, but it was very much a case of I definitely didn't have clear instructions as to please do exactly this, let alone formal instructions, as I now realise I should have had.
Did you realise at the time that you weren't receiving clear instructions?
I just thought that was the way things worked. So
that's a slightly different point. Did you realise at the time that you were not receiving clear instructions?
No, because I didn't know that I should have been.
Irrespective of the formality of a letter of instruction, which you say you now realise that you ought to have received, did you at the time realise that the requests being made of you were unclear?
They were certainly unclear, and I did the best I could to interpret what I thought I was being asked. And sometimes I did actually seek clarification, say, I think what you mean is this, isn't it?
You also describe in your witness statement that, quote, at times I struggled to deal with the Post Office's demands. Is that because you were heavily involved in the rollout of Horizon Online?
Yes. I mean, there was clearly a scheduling problem I had, which I think I managed to fulfil, but yes.
Did you feel that there was pressure applied to you by the Post Office to provide evidence in Mrs. Misra's case that conformed to the Post Office's expectations?
Yes, they clearly wanted me to say that everything was perfect, and I don't think I actually said that.
In what way did that pressure manifest itself?
I kept on getting emails. It was in spurts. It wasn't solid throughout the time, but I kept on being asked, please can I do this, please can I do that, and I'd get occasional phone calls as well.
Did you feel uncomfortable about the pressure that you were being placed, that was being placed upon you?
Uncomfortable. I just got on with things, which is what my normal reaction to try and handle things rather than worry about things.
So you felt uncomfortable but got on with it?
Yes.
Did you raise the fact that you felt uncomfortable with any of your managers?
Yes, for example, there was the discussion with David Jones at the beginning of February that we had, and that was part of my uncomfortableness, if you like. And there were occasions when I'd raised with my line manager, look, I'm being asked to do all this, but you want me to do all my day job stuff. How does this all tie together?
I was not thinking so much about the capacity issue, but rather we want evidence, the substance of the evidence. In your words, I think you said to say that the system was all okay, all right, and you felt uncomfortable about doing that.
Well, I think that was the reason why we got in touch with David Jones, for example, at the beginning of February.
Other than that, did you escalate it in any way within your organisation?
I can't remember properly. I think I think there may be some examples within the emails, but I can't remember off the top of my head exactly which ones they were.
Okay. Can we look, please, at FUJ 0012 2794? Now, by this time, this is February 2010, for context, you'd received by this time a request to produce a witness statement. And if we go down, please, to page 2. Thank you. We'll see an email from Jarnail Singh, in fact it's from his secretary or PA on his behalf, of the 5th of February at 10 to 4 to Mr. Jones, and copied to you and Penny Thomas.
Yes.
The email body is addressed to you, Dear David and Penny. He says, on first glance, points 2 to 4 have not been answered, and I reproduce them below. And item 3, when Gareth completes his statement, as I've said already, by this time you've been asked to provide a witness statement.
Yeah.
When Gareth completes his statement, could he also mention whether there are any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of? If none, could this be clarified in the statement? So this is an email from the post office to 3 of you in Fujitsu, correct?
Yes.
And you're getting the request directly here from the lawyer, the prosecution lawyer, Jarnail Singh?
Yes. Yeah.
Just looking at the request in number 3, would you agree that that's a broad request?
Yes, it is.
It does not ask whether there were known problems which affected Seema Misra's branch at West Byfleet, does it?
No, not at that stage.
It doesn't ask you whether you personally know of problems within Horizon. It asks whether you can say whether Fujitsu knows of problems with Horizon, doesn't it?
Yes, and I responded to that saying, identifying a problem that I was aware of that would need to be checked out.
I'm going to come to your answers in a moment. I'm just looking at what the request means at the moment. I think you've agreed that it was broad. It's not limited to Seema Misra's branch, and it's not limited to your own knowledge. It's Fujitsu's knowledge.
I see now that is what it said. I'm not sure that I would analysed it in that way at the time.
Why might you not have analysed it, or why put aside analysis of it? Why might you not have read it that way at the time?
I thought that all I could be really commenting on was what was happening in the particular branch when we actually had some data to look at for the specific branch.
That plainly doesn't say that, though, does it? It doesn't ask that.
I realise that now.
We now know that request originated from the prosecution barrister, Warwick Tapford. If we go up, please, to the bottom of page 1, if we just look at your reply, 1606, can you see that you reply to David Jones and Penny Thomas?
Yes.
And so you've cut the post office person, Jan L. Singh, out of the chain.
Yes.
Why did you cut Jan L. Singh out of the chain?
I wanted advice from David Jones in particular as to exactly what I should be saying, particularly since I was reluctant to make a clear statement and that I was aware of this problem, so I wanted guidance as to what I should be saying about it.
So you were really looking for a steer from Fujitsu Legal on how to deal with this request?
Yes.
You say brief responses as below, but not sure that I should put them in a witness statement.
Again, I was seeking guidance.
And just help us with why you weren't sure you should put them in a witness statement.
I was just trying to get some clarity as to whether exactly what I should be saying. I was looking for guidance, particularly from David Jones, as to what I should be saying.
But why were you not sure you should put them in a witness statement?
I just didn't know. I'd not really had much to do with this sort of thing, so I was just seeking some sort of guidance.
But what were the reasons that would prevent you from putting them in a witness statement?
I didn't know. I was just ignorant.
Is this something that we do? We provide witness statements? I mean, you were providing one already.
Yeah. I was just asking the question.
Wasn't it more about the content? You were worried about putting the content in a witness statement?
I was looking for guidance as to what I should be saying.
Just help us. Weren't you really not focusing on should I provide a witness statement or not? You were saying by that, I'm not really sure that I should put this content in a witness statement.
I don't know.
Look at number 3. You'll remember this is the answer to the question, could he also mention whether there are any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of? If none, could this be clarified in the statement? You say, this is where I'm reluctant to make a clear statement. I'm aware of one problem where transactions have been lost in particular circumstances, excuse me, due to locking issues. When this happens, we have events in the eventing logs to indicate that there was an issue. And whenever we provide transaction logs to the post office, we check for any such events. In the case of West Byfleet, we've not provided any transaction logs and so have not made these checks. Would you agree that the implication of that was that you may be able to respond to question 3 when you had the ARQ data?
Yes, I think that's basically what I was trying to say there.
Now, you refer to one problem in that answer. You were referring to the Calendar Square bug, right?
No, I was referring to the Craig Park issue. I wasn't aware of the Canada Square issue at that time.
Could the Craig Park issue be checked for by reference to ARQ data?
It could be, no, but it could be checked in reference to the NT event logs.
And is that what you're referring to where you say transaction logs?
Well, the transaction logs I'm referring to is ARQ data, but I was saying that when we provide transaction logs, we also check against the corresponding NT events as part of that process.
And that's what you refer to when you say eventing?
Correct.
So that means NT event logs?
Well,
So the third line?
yes.
At this time, did you know of other problems which would require more than the ARQ data to investigate whether they were in play at this branch?
I wasn't aware of any other such problems.
What about accounting discrepancies due to hardware failures?
I thought that those would have been picked up as would have been picked up at the time, because they would have been fairly obvious at the time when there were such hardware failures.
You'd need to look, wouldn't you? I mean, whether or not they'd been picked up at the time or not was the very issue that you would be looking for, wouldn't you?
I'm not sure whether I was thinking of that at the time.
You agree now?
This was the issue that I thought about, so therefore I raised this and asked for guidance as to what should be done about it.
But what about bad blocks? Do you remember what they were?
I don't think bad blocks actually caused problems. What that effectively meant was the system came to a halt and then needed to be restarted to sort things out.
Would that be shown on an NT event log?
Yes.
You'd need the Horizon Help Desk records to look for calls suggesting that hardware had been at fault, wouldn't you?
I was aware that someone else had done an analysis of help desk.
Were you aware of that?
Maybe not at this point, but I became aware of that as time went on.
At this point, you, in order to answer that question, even if it was restricted in your mind to West Byfleet, you would need to look at the Horizon Help Desk records to look for calls made by Mrs. Misra or other people at branch level, for example, suggesting hardware issues, wouldn't you?
I wasn't aware that I would have needed to done that because, as I say, I thought that that was something that someone else would be covering.
Why did you think that it would be something that somebody else would be covering?
Because my expertise was in the software rather than the hardware.
Wouldn't you need the full message store to look for unusual restarts?
You could see those. You should be able to see those from the ARQ data, I think.
You think or you know?
I'm trying to remember now. It's a long time ago since I looked through the detailed ARQ data.
If you were going to give a complete answer to the question whether there were any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of, you would need to investigate pinnacles and peaks, wouldn't you?
Yes, but as I say, I was, at this stage, I was just saying I couldn't make a clear statement. But I wasn't thinking about what else I would need to do. I was just saying this is my immediate response to the question I've been asked.
But do you agree that if you were going to give a complete answer to the question of whether there were any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of, you would need to look at pinnacles and peaks?
There would be some need to do that, and I believe I did so at some point.
You would need to look at Kells to see which problems were in play for at least the period when Mrs. Misra was alleged to have stolen money from the West Byfleet branch, wouldn't you?
I'm not sure that I would have thought of looking at Kells because my normal approach was to look at the peaks and pinnacles which sat behind them rather than the actual Kells.
But you agree that if you were to answer the question completely of whether there were known problems with Horizon that Fujitsu are aware of, you would at least have to look at any pinnacles or peaks to see whether any known problems were in play for at least the period when Mrs. Misra was alleged to have stolen money from West Byfleet.
I wasn't actually answering the question at this point. I was just saying that I didn't think I could answer the question.
No, but I'm asking you, if you were to answer it accurately and completely, that's what you would need to do.
Possibly, to say, I don't think I ever did actually answer that question as such.
Right, we know that you didn't. I'm looking at what you would need to do in order to have done it properly, accurately, completely. The implication of the answer that you gave, namely, I could answer the question if I was given event logs and ARQ data, that wasn't right, was it? You needed much more information to answer it accurately and completely.
I'd not thought of that at the time.
Do you agree now?
Possibly, I don't know.
Why don't you know?
Yeah, I probably would have had to do some further research.
Thank you. Now, I think you and your colleagues that can come down within Fujitsu made a number of suggestions to the post office in the following days to obtain relevant transaction data in relation to Mrs. Misra's tenure at the West Byfleet branch, didn't you?
Yes.
Can we look at those repeated requests, excuse me, to the post office? FUJ 0012 2713. And page 1, thank you, 5th of February 246, Mr. Jones, the lawyer, to Mr. Singh, the lawyer, you and Penny Thomas copied in. And it's just in relation to the part, if we scroll down, please. Thank you. The penultimate paragraph, Mr. Jones says to the post office, one concern is that the post office have not apparently requested transaction data for West Byfleet for the period and transactions in question. This would normally be provided in previous cases and would include Fujitsu extracting log files from the system to enable us to provide details of transactions. Surprisingly, this has not been requested in this case. Perhaps you would consider the need for this. And that's a request or a sentiment I think you would agree with.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you. And if we look, please, at FUJ 0015 2930. Same day at 5:10. Same distribution, Jones to Singh, you and Penny Thomas copied in. And if we scroll down, please. Thank you. He says, he effectively parses your reply that we've just looked at into numbered paragraph 3.
Yes.
And in the last part of the paragraph, he says to Mr. Singh, in the case of West Byfleet, we've not been asked to provide any transaction logs, so have not made these checks. Yes?
Correct.
So essentially making a similar demand or request or point to the post office.
Yes.
Agreed?
Agreed.
So twice in one day, essentially.
Yes.
And then can we look at poll 309 3961? And page 19, please. This is a draft witness statement that you provided on the 8th of February 2010 in Seema Misra's case. And if we just go forward for present purposes to page 21. We can see in the top paragraph, I think you're performing the familiar task of cutting into a document of yours, what somebody else says. Here it's Professor McLachlan, is that right?
Yes, I think this is his third report, I believe.
Yes.
And so the italics is my response to the normal font of his actual statements in the report.
And so in his report, he'd said the implication that EPOS transactions can be lost due to equipment failures without access to the sub-post office data records and the intermediate data records in the end-to-end process. It will not be possible to identify the extent to which this may explain the accounting discrepancies. And you say in your witness statement, your draft witness statement, no request has been made to Fujitsu for any data relating to this branch. The logs would show any equipment failures and replacement which might possibly relate to lost transactions. So again, you're making a point this time a bit more formally in a witness statement that there's been no request for any data relating to the branch.
Correct.
And was that unusual?
My understanding was that it was normal when there was a prosecution to request the data to have the basis of what was alleged to have taken place in the branch. But I wasn't very close to things, but I thought that was the whole point of the prosecution support team within Fujitsu, was to provide that data in support of prosecutions. And I assumed it was done in all cases, but I didn't really know.
And normal to obtain the data relating to the period covered by the charge?
Whatever period Post Office requested, I'd say I wasn't that close to know exactly what period we were talking about.
Did you know whether they normally requested the period covered by the charge?
No, I didn't know that.
You didn't know one way or the other?
Correct, yes.
Would it make sense to you that they would request data for the period covered by the charge?
Yes, I can understand that.
Can we go forwards, please? In fact, it's on the same day. FUJ 308 3722. And if we scroll down, please, to the top of page 2. We see a chain there beginning, I'm not going to go through it all, from Anne Chambers to others about Calendar Square in 2006. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
If we just go back up to the bottom of page 1, we see, thank you, on the 8th of February, so the same day that we were looking at that draft witness statement, Anne Chambers essentially forwarding you that chain. Is that
yes,
right?
That's right.
Do you remember the circumstances in which she forwarded you that chain?
I think I'd asked her to do so because one of the requests I had, and if we go back to the witness statement we were just looking at, there was a comment there saying, I've asked about Calendar Square and I don't know anything about it, but I can do some research, and this was me doing that research.
Okay, so you've been asked to comment in a witness statement about the Calendar Square bug. You had no personal knowledge and you were trying to find out some information.
Yes.
From Anne Chambers.
Yes.
And one of the things she did was forward you this chain.
Yes.
And she highlights a Kel and asks you, can you see Kels? And says to you, I'd forgotten this did give a discrepancy, but also a receipts and payments mismatch if they persisted and rolled over, though it was usually obvious that something was wrong, and a flood of NT events, not riposte events, which SMC should have noticed at the time. Since we're now checking for these particular events and did a catch-up for old retrievals, can you say that the current branch did not have this problem? Anyway, it stopped happening once S90 was installed around 4th of March, according to the info below. The problem would only affect branches with more than one stock unit. It happened several times at Calendar Square, though we never found out why they were so badly affected. Is this sufficient? She said, I'd forgotten this did give a discrepancy. Had you asked her whether the bug would produce discrepancies?
I can't remember the conversation I had at the time. I was just asking for information.
That rather implies that there had been an exchange or a conversation when she had forgotten that this bug had produced discrepancies.
Yes, I could well have asked about that. As I say, I just can't remember that conversation.
Would you be interested to know whether the bug did or did not produce discrepancies?
Clearly, because if there had been a discrepancy, then that would be something important to have reported on.
Also, whether the bug was, or the effects of the bug were noticeable to the user, the branch user.
Yes.
That would be something that would be important to discover.
Yes.
She asked the question, or she says, since we're now checking for these particular events and did a catch-up for old retrievals, she then asked the question, can you say that the current branch did not have this problem?
Well, at that stage I couldn't, but that was a check that we did later do when we checked the NT events for the West Five Street branch.
Do you agree that there's an implication there that you're looking for ways to find or to say that the bug had no application in Seaman Misra's case?
Yes.
Was there a bigger point arising from this email, namely the fact that the calendar square bug existed, that it produced discrepancies, meant that before testifying as to the reliability of Horizon accounts, you needed to carry out a thorough review of Pinnacles, Peaks and Kells?
I thought that what I needed to do was a thorough review of the NT events, which is what I did.
I think you've reflected earlier in your evidence that you now realise that something more broad was needed, or a broader...
Looking back now, but at the time I thought it was sufficient to just look at the NT events.
And help desk records as well, would you include that in the list of things that you ought to have looked at?
Now, yes. At the time, I felt that had, or at least maybe not at this exact time, but I was aware at some stage that Andy Dunks had actually done a survey of help desk calls.
We're going to come to those a bit later. Do you agree that in order to answer the question that had been asked of you, you would need to look at the full message store?
I would certainly need to look at the ARQ data. Whether I needed to look at the full message store or not, I'm not 100% sure.
Why aren't you 100% sure?
I'm not sure what I would have found in the full message store that was not obvious in the ARQ data. It's certainly useful to have the full message store there to look at if I would need to do so, and I made sure I did get it.
Winding forwards, you say eventually in your witness statement that you had little personal knowledge of the calendar square bug until 2010, when you were asked to find out about it and comment on it in the Misra case. Yes?
And that's what this email exchange is all about.
Yes. If you didn't have any personal knowledge at all, do you know why you were asked to comment on it?
No, is a simple answer.
Did you question why somebody with no knowledge about an issue was asked to provide a witness statement and then go to court about the issue?
No, I don't know why that was done.
Or did you question why somebody with actual or real experience of the bug in question was not being asked to answer the questions?
No, I don't know why that was done.
Do you agree that if you had no first-hand knowledge of the bug, you weren't truly in a position to give evidence about its effects, and whether or not it had afflicted Mrs. Misra's branch?
I think in the research that I did, I learned sufficient about the bug to be able to say that it hadn't affected that particular branch.
What about the broader issues as to the bug itself? Were you in a sufficiently knowledgeable position to give evidence about that?
I knew enough about it. I don't think anyone knew what the real underlying cause was, because that was something in the Escher softwares we discussed the other day.
Can we move forwards, please? Poll 305 4220. And look at page 2, please. If we just look at the foot of page 1, we can see this is an email from you, I think. There we are. You to Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Singh, copied to Penny Thomas. And we're on the 25th of February now.
Okay.
And then scroll down. You apologise for a delay in replying. You say things were hectic. And you had a day of leave. And then you're essentially reporting back your communication or conversation with Professor McLachlan, yes?
Yes.
And in the 4th paragraph, you say, I also explained to him how Summer Horizon works and why why this means that some of his hypotheses were invalid. I also pointed out that in order to identify exactly what was happening, then it would be necessary to go through the detailed logs of the relevant times. And that as far as I was aware, no request had been made for any such logs, though I think they may now have been requested. So it was still the case that you were, by the 25th of February, conducting a conversation with the defence expert without an analysis having occurred of what you call the detailed logs of the relevant times.
Correct.
And was that problematic?
It really depended what the questions were. So, I mean, I think we had quite a useful discussion in terms of, at a high level, how Horizon was operating. But clearly, in terms of proving some of the detail and some of his hypotheses, we would need to examine the logs.
Can we go to the next day, please? The 26th of February 2010. By looking at FUJ 0015-2992. Can we see you send a further email the next day to Mr. Singh, copied again to Penny Thomas, and you say, Jarnell, I've no idea what it is that the defence is looking for in this case, or exactly what is alleged to have happened. It is normal to identify a specific time period of about a month to look for some specific fraudulent transactions. As I've no idea exactly what is being alleged, I can't really advise as to what evidence might be required either to support the prosecution or the defence. The Post Office's prosecution support team have a formal mechanism to request logs for specific periods, and there is a process to do that. Although I've suggested for some time that these logs are requested, I understand that no such request has been made to Fujitsu. Trying to analyse transactions over a period of 2 or 3 years, and there you're referring essentially to the period of the allegations against Mrs. Misra, is that right?
I'm not sure that I was fully aware of the period of the allegation at that stage, but I think I was probably generally aware that we were talking about a long period, not a short period.
Is likely to take several weeks or months of effort, especially if it's not clear what's being looked for. And I certainly cannot commit that amount of time to it. So again, you're pressing the point that you've been asking for some time now, or Fujitsu have been asking for some time now, that the logs be requested.
Yes.
Can we look, please, at poll 00169122? And look at page 3, please. Thank you. This is an email from from John Longman to Mark Dinsdale, but copied to Jarnell Singh, but it records the fact that Jarnell Singh has just telephoned me to get transaction log data for the above post office from the 1st of December 2006 to the 31st of December 2007. Had you advised or suggested that that limited period time period be the extent of the request for transaction log data?
No.
But in any event, it seems that at this time, or by this time, on the 26th, there had been a request for transaction log data for that limited period.
So I understand, and I know that's the data that I eventually got.
Yeah. When you eventually got the data for that limited period, did you think, why am I getting the data for this period?
I took the fact that I was being given data for that period, that was the limit of what I needed to investigate.
That's circular. Did you realise, did you know why you were given data between those two time periods?
I think I may have been told that that was the period during which false accounting had occurred and there had been some question about theft. I think I've set that out in my witness statement, but I can't remember the exact details.
Can we go forwards, please, to what you say about the analysis of that transaction data? FUJ 0015 6128. We're on the 3rd of March now. Email from you to Warwick Tapford. Copied to Penny Thomas. Warwick, I've added my comments to the 5th report, and the paragraph below you say, I've now also got hold of the transaction logs for December 06 to December 07. These amount to a total of nearly 500,000 transactions. Can you see that?
Yes.
So by this time you had the ARQ data, is that right, for the limited period that had been requested?
Yes, and I think I also had the raw logs, but the analysis I did was restricted to what I had in the ARQ data.
Why was the analysis restricted to what you had in the ARQ data?
Because I was looking for specific things that had been mentioned in Professor McLaughlin's second report, as I lay out in this email. So this email is saying, this is the investigation that I have done on the data that I've got. And I also, I believe, suggested other things that could be looked at, and I don't think anyone ever took me up on it and said, can you please go and have a look at that as well?
So again, it was a restricted function that you were performing, i.e. responding to that which Professor McLaughlin had alleged?
Yes. And I believe I'd been told that this was all needed very quickly because I believe there was a court date about a week or so later, so there wasn't really time to do anything more thorough than that.
Indeed. Can we look at your witness statement, please? It's your 3rd witness statement in the Misra case. Poll 401643. Can you see that's your witness statement of
yes.
the 9th of March, which is your 3rd witness statement in the Misra case? And so by this time, you'd got the ARQ data for the limited period that had been allowed, and you'd also had the exchange with Anne Chambers about Calendar Square.
Yes.
And I think you addressed both of those in this witness statement.
Yes. And I think I also addressed Professor McLaughlin's 5th report as well.
Do you agree that in the witness statement, it's not disclosed on the face of the witness statement what work you had done yourself and what work had been done by others?
Yes, because at that point I wasn't aware that there was a need to make that sort of distinction, though I realise now that I should have done.
If we go forward to page 12, please. You're here dealing with a request to comment on Calendar Square, and you say, I've been requested to comment on the issue raised by the defence in relation to a post office called Calendar Square, Falkirk, that was mentioned at the Castleton trial. I have examined our records and can confirm the following. The problem occurred when transferring cash or stock between stock units. Note that West Byfleet does operate multiple stock units, so the issue could have occurred. It manifests itself by the receiving stock unit not being able to see the transfer being made to the sending stock unit, and is compounded by attempting to make a further transfer. Please note that such transactions usually reappear the next day. It's clearly visible to the user as the receipts and payments mismatch at the time that one of the stock units is balanced. This usually results in the branch raising a call. There are no such calls in Andy Dunk's witness statement of the 29th of January, which summarises the calls raised by West Byfleet. Also, this can be checked on any balance reports or trading statements that are available from the branch, which should show that receipts and payments do not match and that the trading position is zero. The problem is also visible when looking at system events associated with the branch. Reading on the system events from the 30th of June 2005 to the 31st of December 2009 for West Byfleet have been checked and no such events have been found. The problem was fixed in the S90 release, which went live in March 2006, and so would not have been relevant at the time of the detailed transaction logs obtained for West Byfleet between December 06 and December 07. Do you agree that much of what you said here was assertions made by you based on what Anne Chambers had told you?
I had also looked at the underlying peak, which had got the analysis that she had done at the time.
Is that the reference, if we go back up the page, to I have examined our records?
I think so, yes.
So, for example, you say the problem was fixed. Could you say that the problem was fixed?
I could. The peak said that the peak was closed with a comment saying that this fix appears to have done it and the problem has not reoccurred since the fix had gone in.
That's slightly different from asserting in a witness statement that the problem was fixed, isn't it?
I didn't think so at the time.
Looking back now, do you appreciate the difference?
Okay, yes, I probably appreciate the difference now, but at the time I felt that it was the same thing.
If we carry on reading over the page, you say, therefore, I can conclude that the problems identified in Calendar Square are not relevant to West Byfleet. And then you go on to say, on the 2nd of October 2009, I produced a report about Horizon data integrity. Within this report are details about transactions, sometimes known as EPOS transactions, and various scenarios that could occur following system failures. In rare circumstances, it's possible for transactions to not be recorded on the local system, but in all such cases, the user would be aware of this. I produced the report as your exhibit JG01. That's your Horizon data integrity report, the first one that we looked at yesterday.
It is.
Is that right?
Yes.
The cross-reference, no need to go there, is FUJ 308 0526. Why were you producing that report in the context of the Misra case?
Because I thought it gave a useful summary in section 3 of the sort of hardware errors that could occur that could possibly cause loss of data.
You continue, as with any large system, there will be occasional failures, such as the one found in Calendar Square, Falkirk. Any such faults, whether during testing or from live user feedback, would be investigated and resolved appropriately. I'm not aware of any such faults that have been raised by West Byfleet. If specific transactions can be identified where the user feels the system has caused losses, then further investigation can be made. Was that paragraph as close, that last paragraph, as close as you ever came to answering the broad question that originated from Mr. Tatford, namely whether there are any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of?
That was probably addressing that request, yes.
You make your answer conditional, don't you? any such faults, whether found during testing, etc., would be investigated and resolved appropriately, don't you?
That was my belief.
But it's conditional, isn't it? It suggests to the reader that there weren't any which Fujitsu actually knew about other than Calendar Square.
And I believe I was confident of that because by this time I had actually looked at the NT event logs from the time, and I would have expected, if there had been faults, for there to be evidence in the NT event logs to reflect those.
The first part of the paragraph is dealing with Horizon more generally, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Not the branch in question, West Byfleet.
Yes.
Would you agree that a complete answer would say there are many known problems with Horizon? Fujitsu keeps records of them in documents called Pinnacles, Peaks and Kells.
I can understand that now. I don't think I would have thought of it that way at the time.
But by answering the question in this way, you did not disclose the existence of Pinnacles, Peaks and Kells, did you?
I didn't know that I needed to.
By answering the question in this way, conditionally, any such faults would be investigated, rather suggests that the only one is Calendar Square, doesn't it?
But certainly later on in the process, I did make it clear that there were Pinnacles, Peaks and Kells, and no one asked me to say anything about those in any sort of statement.
In any case, you say that any faults would be investigated and resolved appropriately.
That was my belief.
You believed in the life of Horizon all faults had been resolved appropriately.
That was my understanding.
What investigation did you carry out in order to be able confidently to assert that?
I'm not sure that I did any specific investigation at the time.
Thank you. Can we turn to a different topic, please? Whether you mentioned in your witness statements your knowledge of other bugs.
Okay.
By looking to start with, please, at FUJ 0011 7478. And this is a document I don't think we've seen before or much before. It's prepared by you, correct, on the 29th of January?
Yes, but this relates to Horizon Online, not Legacy Horizon.
Yeah. I'm going to look at a series of Horizon Online, just so you know where I'm going.
Okay.
Issues. The heading tells us what it's about, the issue of duplicate statements found at Derby. The purpose of the notice is to describe the issues found at Derby this week with duplicate settlements and present options for fixing the defects. So it sets out the problem, and this had led to duplicate transactions, is that right?
Yes, I need to put this in a bit of context. We're talking now about the pilot of Horizon Online. Mm-hmm. At that stage, it was operating in about a couple of dozen branches. So we were expecting to get some initial problems, and we did, as expected, to get a number of problems during the pilot phase. But as far as I'm aware, the problems were all resolved before we actually rolled out Horizon Online later on that summer.
Okay, that's important context, which may apply
Very important. That's why I wanted to bring it out. that
may apply to a number of the issues that I'm going to ask you about.
I suspect it applies to all of them, but we'll see.
You, at the foot of the page, if we just, go over the page, suggest some solutions, fixes which are either a tactical solution or a strategic solution. Yes?
Yes.
And if we look at the foot of the page, second paragraph under strategic, you say the change is straightforward, a straightforward code change. However, full regression testing of the counter is recommended.
Yes.
And what does that mean, full regression testing of the counter?
That before we would put that change into live, then we would need to go through a regression testing cycle, which would take a few days. So it was a case of how quickly were we going to get the fix in place. And so therefore there may be some benefit in doing the tactical solution first and then the strategic solution later, so as to actually make sure that other branches had the minimum impact of the problem. Got it.
Can we go forward, please, to the 8th of February? FUJ 3092922. These are notes of a Horizon Next Generation implementation meeting on the 8th of February, and we can see that you're present.
Yes.
This is to discuss the Derby issue, or the Derby bug issue, yes?
I think it's not just the Derby bug, I think other things were being discussed as well.
Are they the issues at Coton, Warwick?
Yes. I can't remember what those issues were now, but we had a number of issues during the pilot period.
I think the note records that what was called the Derby bug had manifested itself at Coton and Warwick.
Ah, okay.
Does the fact that this group of people were drawn together reflect the fact that the Derby bug was a serious issue?
Yes, because it affected the accounts, and obviously we didn't want any problems that affected the accounts in Horizon Online moving forward.
Can we go forwards, please, to FUJ 3093031? This is the next day, the 9th of February. I don't think you're on this circulation list.
No, but I think it was forwarded to me later.
Yeah. And did the Derby bug issue lead to a full Fujitsu internal audit, essentially?
Yes. It took place the previous week when I was off sick, which is probably why I wasn't actually involved in the circulation of it, because the auditors wouldn't have talked to me.
And if we just look at the foot of page 1, please. The last paragraph. It says the net effect, I think that's of the bug, would be that the post office and the branch records would not match. Where this happens, the post office investigates the branch and postmaster with a view to retraining or even uncovering fraud. It would seriously undermine the post office's credibility and possibly historic cases if it could be shown that a discrepancy could be caused by a system error rather than the postmaster or clerk action. More importantly, the central database as the system of record would be called into question. Is what is recorded there reflective of the views that you held at the time about the bug?
I was certainly, my view was that these bugs all needed to be fixed before we could put any reliability into the way that Horizon Online operated. I didn't see it as being particularly important in terms of prosecution. What we needed was a system that correctly handled the accounts, and until we had a system that correctly handled the accounts, then we needed to do that moving forward. And I believe that that's what happened by the time the rollout of Horizon Online happened.
Why would you not have seen it through the complexion or the lens of it affecting prosecutions?
Because I didn't think we should be going anywhere near prosecutions in terms of the state of that system until we actually had the system that was stable and operating correctly. Prosecutions was, the important thing was to have the system operating correctly.
Do you agree that the existence of the bug, if revealed, would seriously undermine the Post Office's credibility?
If the bug was left unfixed, yes, but my approach was much more to do with fixing the bug rather than any suggestion of not fixing it. And that was where I was coming from, that the important thing to do was get these bugs fixed, and so that we actually had a properly operating system.
Do you agree that the existence of the bug would would possibly undermine historic cases?
I don't see it was anything to do with historic cases because, as I say, the important thing was to get the thing fixed rather than leave the thing unfixed, and that was what I was focusing on.
Do you know how it was said then in this document that the existence of this bug in Horizon Online could possibly undermine historic cases?
I didn't see that it could affect the historic cases because Horizon Online was a totally different system from the legacy Horizon system as far as the accounting was concerned, so I didn't see that it would have that sort of impact.
The paper explains it in terms that that is because it could be shown that a discrepancy could be caused by a system error rather than the postmaster or clerk action.
I see that's what it says. I wouldn't have necessarily agreed with that, but my focus, as I say, was on actually getting the bugs fixed, not on what the impact they would have had if they hadn't been fixed. Because it was clearly very important that these bugs were fixed.
You didn't reveal the existence of this bug in your March 2010 witness statement or any of the subsequent witness statements, did you?
No, because it's totally irrelevant.
Was that the view, because this was about Horizon Online?
Yes.
You needn't reveal anything about Horizon Online.
It was a totally separate. It was a totally separate system.
And was that your mindset at the time?
Yeah.
I needn't tell the court or the defence anything about the existence of bugs that cause financial discrepancies which aren't revealed to a sub-postmaster in the system we're currently operating, because those facts cannot be relevant to the court.
Yeah, and that is still my technical belief. I understand now that the legal position is different from that, but as a technician, which is basically what I am, not a lawyer, then I still believe that's the case.
But you were stepping out of the computer lab and walking into a court, weren't you?
I didn't realise that there was that difference that I needed to worry about, and no one advised me as to that.
Did you think, I need to take a bit of advice here? There are problems with the current system where, as I'm making these witness statements in the Seema Misra case, we're discovering problems which don't reveal themselves to sub-postmasters, which cause financial discrepancies, and they're caused by bugs. Have I got to reveal that? Should I reveal that? In a candid way to the court?
It never occurred to me that anything to do with Horizon Online was relevant to Legacy Horizon.
You said that
yeah.
It never occurred to you. So it didn't occur to you to reveal it, but it didn't occur to you to ask whether you should reveal it?
No, it just seemed so totally illogical to me.
You didn't know how the legal system worked?
I assume the legal system had some sort of logic to it. I still don't understand why the legal system would think that I should be revealing problems to do with Horizon Online in Legacy Horizon. Okay, I understand now, having been told that I should have considered it, but it just doesn't actually make an awful lot of sense to me as a technician.
And again, I'll ask the question, do you not realise that's the very reason why you should seek advice?
I didn't. I had sought advice from.
Not about this issue.
Well, not this specific issue, but I had sought advice in terms of what I should be saying, and I was from David Jones.
Yes, but not about the broader issue of I've got this knowledge of many bugs, including bugs that are revealing themselves as we roll out or as we develop Horizon Online. Have I got to reveal those too?
It just never occurred to me that it was at all relevant.
Just remember that last paragraph there, in particular the sentence, it would seriously undermine Post Office's credibility and possibly historic cases. And can we look at FUJ 309 4392? and look at the foot of the page, please. This is, thank you, an email exchange. If we just go up, and a bit more, thank you. This is a discussion. You're not party to this discussion, but I just want to know whether you knew about it. This is a discussion about amendments being made to that document we just looked at. You understand, Mr. Jenkins?
Yeah, I understand that. I can't remember if I was copied in on this email or not. I think I may possibly have been past it before, but I certainly wouldn't have taken much notice of it.
If we look at the bottom of the page, thank you. Just a bit further, I think we see it signed off by JP.
Yes. JP gave me some advice and was in contact with me at the time that I was at the SEMA Missouri trial. I think he phoned me up a couple of times to see how I was getting on and so on. So, and he certainly never mentioned to me anything about why I needed to think about problems such as this, which he was well aware of.
Just focusing on this for the moment, he says to Mr. Alvarez, please find below the two comments I'd raised a paragraph, first paragraph, page 2. The following section is potentially problematic. It would seriously undermine post office credibility and possibly historic cases if it could be shown that a discrepancy could be caused by a system error rather than a postmaster clerk action. More importantly, the central database as the system of record would be called into question. As discussed, there is no need to paint this in the worst possible light. I would suggest the following as being accurate without being unduly alarmist. And then the new drafting is if it could be shown that a discrepancy could be caused by a system error rather than a postmaster clerk action, it could potentially call into question the effectiveness of the central database as a system of record. And if we scroll up, please. After review with legal, 2 amendments have been made to the documents, and the sections have been removed as they do not materially add to the primary purpose of the review, which is to determine whether the solution as designed will protect data integrity, and version 3 has been sent to Dave Smith, Post Office. So this seems to record that the sentence about data integrity and affecting possibly past historic cases appears to have been removed before it was sent to the Post Office. Do you agree?
I agree, that's what this says, yes.
Yeah. And if we just go to the top of the page, I think we see that exchange was sent on to you.
Yes.
Do you know why you were being told that the report had been edited to remove the section that said that this discovery of the bug in Horizon Online might affect past historic cases?
I don't think... sorry.
Was going to be removed in the version that was being sent to the Post Office? Why that chain was being sent to you?
I would have taken that as just being sent the latest version of the document rather than taking any notice of the of that particular discussion.
Not because they knew that you were giving evidence about past historic cases?
Not that I thought of at the time.
No.
Mr. Beer, have I got this right? There seems to have been a period of, what is it, 7 or 8 months between the exchange about the contents of the document and it actually being forwarded to Mr.
No, this is one of those dates that where
Right, I see.
it's been Americanized.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's
okay.
actually the 11th.
It's the other way around, 10th of March. Yeah, okay, fine.
Can we go forwards, please, to FUJ 0014-2152? This is a further report of yours a few days later, the 12th of February 2010, i.e. a few days later than the Derby bug issue report, okay?
The original one, I mean, the one you just showed me was March, but
March, the original...
The original, probably, yes, yes.
And you wrote this report, and in summary, is this about another bug which resulted in final balances for branch trading statements being inaccurate?
Yes.
And this was first reported at the post office in Warwick, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
And if we look at the third page, please. I'm so sorry. If we look at FUJ 309 4268. And the third page of that. We'll see that you sign off an email there. And if we scroll up, please. Is this an email discussion between you and others about the issue that we've just looked at in that report, i.e. a bug resulted in trading statements being inaccurate?
I believe so, yes.
And if we scroll down, can you see a passage that's indented which says, given the legal status of these reports, they, the final, are often used in court proceedings when we're trying to recover monies from dismissed sub-postmasters, and the potential integrity challenges that could be levelled against the Horizon system as a result of any differences. Poll need assurance from Fujitsu that they could or will explain the cause of the problem and prove the system has integrity should we be challenged. That's not you speaking, is that right?
No, that's Phil Norton, I think it was, who was sent the email. So again, I've got his questions indented and my responses not indented.
You say, I understand this, though I would have thought most legal proceedings would be based on the first part of the report, which covers cash levels, rather than the second part. Irrespective of that answer, you were being told by Mr. Norton and being left in no doubt as to the importance of the accuracy of branch trading statements for legal proceedings.
And I was aware of that, and my approach was, we've got to fix this problem. We certainly could not leave that problem unfixed for Horizon Online to move forward and be rolled out. And so therefore it was important that the problem did get fixed, which it did.
Did you know at this time that at least since the Lee Castleton case, the Post Office relied on the implicit accuracy of branch trading statements when bringing civil claims against sub-postmasters?
I'm not sure that I was really had any distinction between civil or non-civil claims, but I knew that the branch trading statement, once that came about as part of Impact, was effectively the legal document that was used to say that the accounts had been signed off.
When this bug arose, did you consider the possibility that there may have been other bugs which affected the accuracy of branch trading statements?
I thought I could see that this bug was causing a problem in the accuracy of that part of the branch trading statement report, and felt that it was important to actually get the bug fixed.
Did you consider the possibility of other bugs which affected the accuracy of branch trading statements?
We would look for other bugs there, and I'm not aware that we ever found any other bugs.
Did you look for other bugs there?
Yes. We were looking for all sorts of bugs that could be happening during the pilot. That was the whole point of the pilot.
Can we move forwards, please, to FUJ 309 4235? And in sheet 1, Thank you. And row 20, please. Can you see, well, first of all, do you know what this document is? Do you remember what the document is?
I think this is some sort of tracker of issues during the pilot of Horizon Online.
And number 20, BTS reports incorrect. The narrative, if you just read that to yourself, can you see that in
Yes.
column I? So I'm so sorry, it's the one above. Thank you. So you should really read column B and column I.
Right, I can't remember that problem.
Is this another problem, a separate one from the two that we've just looked at?
Yes, this was a problem as part of the migration of a branch from Legacy Horizon to Horizon Online. A report was produced on the last day it was operating on Legacy Horizon, which was giving effectively a snapshot of the balance, and then another report was generated the following morning showing again the snapshot of the balance, and these two reports were compared, and this looks like to be some sort of issue in that comparison, but I can't remember the details of that particular problem.
It looks like it's a discrepancy bug where stock movements weren't included in the receipts part of the stock units balance report.
Sorry, I just can't remember the detail. I can see that's what the word's saying, but I cannot remember this particular problem.
And the words say that the data that was, quote, included in Horizon was incorrect, whereas the data shown in Horizon Online is incorrect. Sorry, is correct.
That suggests to me that there was a problem in the report that was produced on the Horizon side on the date before you migrated, but the data that was on the Horizon Online version was actually accurate, and therefore there would be a mismatch between the two reports. And the reason for the mismatch was because the data had been calculated inaccurately on the Horizon side, but it was correct on the Horizon Online side, is what I think I'm reading from this.
I see.
But I think I would need to do further research to say anything more than that.
So it seems like it's a problem with Legacy Horizon rather than Horizon Online.
It's a problem with the reporting of the situation on Legacy Horizon, so I don't think it's actually a problem in Legacy Horizon as such. It's purely in the way that that report is being generated. It was a special report that was produced as part of the migration process, I believe.
You'll see that the recommendation on the right-hand side under 17th of February 2010 is not to fix the error.
Yes.
And instead to raise a KEL for coverage. What does that mean, KEL for coverage?
I don't know is the simple answer.
Was that an expression used? Raise a KEL for coverage.
I've not heard of that expression before.
And then a KEL is issued and then it's closed.
Yes. As part of the migration process, there was an automated check made of the electronic versions of these reports, because they're printed in the branch, but there was it was stored away. So there was a comparison of the before and after report. So I'm assuming that as part of the migration process, some sort of alert would have been raised if the reports didn't match. And so the purpose of the KEL was that if the reports didn't match and it was down to this particular reason, then it would then be known about and therefore understood. But
you're assuming a lot there.
I am assuming a lot, but to say more than that, I would need to go back to the individual peaks.
Do you recall making any checks to see whether this bug had affected the West Byfleet branch?
that wouldn't have had any impact. I wouldn't have made any checks because this would have had no impact on the West Byfleet branch because that was still running on Legacy Horizon. This was purely a migration issue, this one.
Did it affect the data that was moved over to Horizon Online?
I don't believe so, no.
What was the, on your understanding, the impact of the bug then?
It was purely to do with the contents of the report produced before and after the migration.
A branch trading statement report?
No, this was a migration report, so it wasn't a branch trade. You didn't. It was decided that it was not sensible to actually get branches to actually produce a branch trading statement on the day they migrated, because that would restrict very much the rate at which migration could take place. So there was just a snapshot that was produced at the times that branches migrated from Legacy Horizon to Horizon Online.
Thank you, that can come down. So when in early March 2010 you signed your third witness statement in Seema Misra's case, you knew about a bug in Horizon Online that had affected created system-generated discrepancies. You knew about the so-called Warwick bug, which resulted in inaccurate branch trading statements in Horizon Online, and that there was a stock unit discrepancy bug which affected migration reports. Now, you didn't reveal any of those three things in your witness statement, did you?
As I said before, because I thought they were totally irrelevant.
But you, in that paragraph we looked at, were you trying to answer Mr. Tatford's general question about known bugs in Horizon?
I was trying to address problems. I assumed he was referring to Legacy Horizon as it operated at the time that Mrs. Misra was operating the branch in West Byfleet. I didn't see that the problem in Horizon Online in 2010 was relevant to something that had taken place in 2006, 2007, which is what I'd been looking at.
Why did you assume his question, which I think you agreed first thing this morning, was broadly drawn and did not have the caveats that you've introduced into it?
I didn't see any relevance of the Horizon Online to the situation we had there.
So you inserted the limitations to the question in the way that you chose to answer it?
I think that's putting it slightly strongly, but it never occurred to me that there was any relevance of that whatsoever.
Thank you, sir. That's a good time for the morning break. Can we take 10 minutes, please, until 11:25?
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, can we finish off the topic we were just looking at by examining an email that you wrote in September 2010 concerning essentially these three Horizon Online bugs that emerged in testing in the early part of 2010? And look at FUJ 0015 6217. And if we go to the last page, please. And then if we just scroll up. You're talking here about a peak and is it Sysman or Seisman 3 events?
Sysman is how I'd call it. It's short for system management.
And what was the system management 3 events?
Basically NT events. So Legacy Horizon used a subsystem called Sysman 2, whilst Horizon Online had a slightly different version of the technology, which was called Sysman 3.
Thank you. If we scroll up, please. And if we keep going, and keep going. Thank you, just stop there. You're emailing Penny Thomas and others saying, Steve Porter's had a look at these events as requested and his responses are below. I'm not going to go to those responses. you say, unfortunately, they're a bit inconclusive, but there's nothing that's obviously suspicious. Given that this relates to Horizon Online in March, you then say this, then we do know that there were a number of potentially serious issues around at that time. So we would need to be wary about making any witness statements associated with such data. However, it should be fine to pass the data to Post Office with an ARQ. We're going to need to tread fairly carefully for ARQs in this area. Can you explain what you meant, please?
Part of the process of extracting ARQ data was to check any NT events that are associated with it. And what I believe has happened here is there has been a request for ARQ data for this particular branch, and some NT events had come back in the search that looked a bit odd. And so therefore what I was suggesting is, yes, we could pass the information to Post Office, but we needed to actually put on a caveat saying that in this particular case there was potentially going to be some sort of problem with that.
You don't say we're going to need to put on a caveat when we pass the ARQ data to the Post Office?
I think I was implying that with what I was saying, and I believe that is what actually happened.
Is it in fact what happened? You put caveats on when the ARQ data...
I think there was a subsequent email exchange where I believe Tom Lillywhite told Post Office, sorry, we can't guarantee the ARQ data for this particular case because we've come up with these events.
What about the passage which says we need to be wary about making witness statements associated with such data? That the potentially serious issues around that time, do those include the 3 bugs that I've drawn to your attention?
Yes, I would certainly not have been happy about any of that data from that pilot period being used in anywhere near any prosecution, because the system was not stable at that time.
And so wary about making witness statements means what? We should not make a witness statement relying on such data?
Yes, basically.
We should tell the Post Office that you should not confidently prosecute anyone in reliance on such data?
That was my feeling at the time, yes.
Thank you. Did you consider whether that kind of sentiment ought to have been, or view, ought to have been revealed when you were making your witness statements in the Misra case? Look, it can happen in the operation of the Horizon system that data is produced upon which reliance by a court should not be placed.
No, because this was a totally different circumstance. Here we were talking about a pilot of Horizon Online, whilst by the time period we were talking about for Mrs. Misra's case, then we were actually had what I felt was a stable system.
Thank you. Can we turn to a separate issue? The duplication of transaction records contained in ARQ data.
Yep.
Can we start by looking at FUJ 30097058? This is a document I think you know authored by Penny Thomas.
Yes.
Its date is the 22nd of June 2010, and it records duplicate record issues in ARQ returns. Can you explain in layman's terms what the problem was?
Yes. When ARQ data was being collected from Legacy Horizon, there were certain circumstances in which we might record the same transaction more than once into the audit server. So there could be multiple copies of the same message recorded in the audit server. And the way in which ARQ data was extracted from that in terms of producing the spreadsheets on Legacy Horizon discarded these duplicates.
It was supposed to discard it.
On Legacy Horizon,
Yes.
it did.
Yes.
What we had here was when we moved to Horizon Online, from the same raw data, we had a different mechanism for extracting the ARQ spreadsheets. And it was found that the mechanism that was used for generating the ARQ spreadsheets that was now in use with Horizon Online did not detect and discard these duplicates that were in the raw audit trail.
Thank you. And if we just scroll down, please. Point one, number point one, identifies the issue as urgent in CS prayers. What were they?
It was a regular meeting, so CS stands for Customer Services.
Okay, so they're a morning type meeting.
Yes. So, they used to be referred to as prayers. I'm not quite sure why, but it was really a case of a get-together first thing in the morning to work out what the agenda of the urgent issues for the day was.
And I think we see in numbered paragraph 4, a separate issue was identified where a seemingly duplicated transaction had a different NUM. That's some form of identifier, is that right?
Yes, each record should have a unique identifier, which was actually in 3 parts. So there was the branch, the FAD code for the branch, the counter position, and then a serial number, which started at 1 when the branch was first installed, and by this time was up into the millions, probably, relating to the number of records that had been produced for each counter.
So that's an additional problem on top of the problem?
No. This isn't for a problem at all.
Right.
What this is all to do with is if you actually look at the data without taking account of the NUM, you may have things that look like they're identical data, but they aren't actually genuine duplicates. Sorry, they are not duplicates. They are actually 2 real records that look almost identical.
And if we go to point 6, please. Ooh. If we just go back up. We need to identify which cases provided with ARQ returns since the Horizon Online application has been live have progressed to prosecution, and identify whether duplicate records were included. We'll need Post Office involvement to ensure all instances are covered. A very quick review identifies that both West Byfleet and Porters Avenue are included here. To what extent is not yet known. Do you know why West Byfleet was analysed?
I think Penny had been going through all the ARQ returns, and clearly we had produced ARQ data for West Byfleet using the Horizon Online extraction mechanism back in March, as we discussed earlier this morning.
And so it was relevant, this problem, to the prosecution of Mrs. Misra?
Yes, it was, which is why I produced a separate witness statement explaining the problem.
Why was the Post Office involvement necessary to ensure that all instances were covered?
I think it was a case of doing a double check that we knew exactly which ARQ returns were involved in prosecutions, because sometimes Post Office would ask for ARQ data that wasn't relevant to prosecution. So I think Penny had done an analysis of all the ARQ returns that she'd done using this mechanism, but she wanted to get Post Office involved to make sure that she hadn't missed any and understood which ones were the high priority ones to sort out, so as to get some sort of workload scheduling.
So it wasn't the case Fujitsu could not identify all incidents?
No. Penny had, as I understand it, I don't have personal knowledge of that, but my understanding was that she had good records of every ARQ that she'd ever extracted and when she produced it and so on, and she could go through those records. I think there's an email a day or 2 later where she actually produces some statistics.
Can we look at FUJ 309 7047? And start at page 5, please. We see that she sends her report that we've just looked at, yes?
Yes.
Through to you and others on the 23rd of June. And then if we scroll up, please. Penny says, here's some analysis. So this is, I think, a day later.
Yeah, so these are the statistics that I mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yes. Number of ARQs affected. number of ARQs where one or two instances highlighted which indicates bona fide activity. What does that, do you know what that means?
Sorry, I don't.
Number of ARQs, work in progress, presumably.
Yes.
12 ARQs where court action is known, number of cases is 2. Did that include West Byfleet?
I'm assuming that's Porters Avenue and West Byfleet that was mentioned in the previous note, but I'm not 100% sure of that. 8
ARQs returned where witness statement requested but not yet provided. Number of cases was 3. And ARQs where no court activity is known is 76. And then scroll down, audit development are currently working on a fix, which is expected to be available by the 29th. And then you're said to have suggested the following explanation for the post office.
Yes.
Did you suggest that explanation?
I believe so. And hopefully that is pretty well what I just said a few minutes ago.
If we scroll on, she says she wanted to speak with her counterpart in the post office, presumably.
Yes.
Comments, please. Then if we scroll back up, please, to the next page. Guy Wilkerson asked, would the additional transactions make any difference to the charges for a sub-postmaster? And then keep scrolling. She replies, these are original records which have been duplicated when copying to the audit server. We're not suggesting that the original records have been duplicated. And that, of course, is correct, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
If analysis was undertaken on the audit data, some transactions would be duplicated, both plus and minus, we hope. Analysis on stock units could be out as TI would show duplicated transfers, and equally would TO. What do both of those mean?
Transfer in and transfer out, so it's to do with transferring cash between stock units.
Cash on hand analysis would also be out. Is there anything I should add, Gareth? And then scroll up. You say that covers it. There's no guarantee that the duplicates are even complete sessions, in which case the sum of all transactions may even be out. In summary, any detailed analysis of the finances of a branch which is done with duplicate transactions without realising there are duplicates, and so removing them, will give incorrect results. And then, and that would be a serious issue, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes.
And then scroll up, and then keep going, and keep going, and keep going. Jeff Butts says, don't make any communication with post office. We're looking and awaiting for a workaround, and scroll up, and scroll up. Penny says that she's not going to communicate with post office. I do have questions. My assumption is that any records which have been duplicated and presented to court will need to be replaced. The 2 forthcoming high-profile cases, West Byfleet and Porters Avenue, immediately spring to mind. We've only been presenting duplicate records since the beginning of the year, and although not an impossibility, it's unlikely we would have provided records for any cases in such a short, heard in such a short time frame. I can find no record of any witness statement provided, apart from those listed. We need confirmation from Poll and guidance from legal. All of the returns listed may not end up in court. We need to be aware that a significant amount of money, that a significant amount may need replacing. If we go back down to your explanation, keep going, sorry. Thank you. I don't think that includes the point that you made, that was made originally, that you had spotted, that the problem with a duplicate with a different NUM. Instead, it refers to the NUM as being a reliable way to identify a duplicate, doesn't it?
I think you may have misunderstood what the other issue was.
Okay.
The other issue was that you would get
That's
two...
completely possible, by the way. So
Sorry?
That's completely possible.
Sorry. The other issue was where you would actually get two transactions that were identical apart from their NUM, and therefore if you tried filtering things out without looking at the NUM, you might be filtering out things that weren't actually genuine duplicates.
I see. And so is that why that's not mentioned in Section 8?
Yes. So therefore, what's saying there, the reliable way of identifying the duplicates is to use the NUM for the filtering rather than by looking at the text of what was presented in the ARQ.
Thank you. So overall, would you agree this was a serious problem?
Oh, yes.
Can we turn to things that you were saying at this time? There's a separate issue that can come down. As perhaps a way of understanding what was operative upon you at the time. FUJ 0015 2888. And look at page 2, please. Can you see that you have been reading through a report? Can you see that?
Yes, I can see that.
And is that about Shoebury-Ness and Leon C?
I can't. I thought this was to do with Porters Avenue, but I'm not. I don't recall this particularly. All I can go by is the email.
If we just scroll down. And again, please. Thank you. I've received a copy of an accountant's report and attach.
Yes.
And a statement from Phil Budd. Please could you read the report and decide how to continue. The request from the accountant, Charles McLachlan, suggests a telephone call. Does that help or not?
Not really. As I say, I do remember looking at something to do with Porters Avenue, and I do remember that Phil Budd had something to do with it, so that's why I'm assuming this is to do with that, but I can't remember the context, and I've certainly no recollection of what the report said and why I was concerned about it.
If we go up to page 2 then, where we were. Thank you. You say, Penny, I've now read through this report. I agree there probably needs to be some further investigation here. However, I'm also aware that this is potentially highly political. Therefore, I'm not sure how best to address this. We don't really want to be seen to be undermining a post office prosecution. I think the report does raise a number of questions without detailed analysis of the various transactions over the period described, 6 to 9 months. It's difficult to progress. The cost of such analysis is likely to be high. We did some similar analysis over a 2-month period for a defence accountant about a year ago and were paid for it. Pete Sewell set it up and did most of the hard work, and I presented it to the accountant. I think we need some management guidance on this. You say that this is highly political.
Basically what I meant, it's not a technical issue, this is something that management need to think about.
Then you'd say this is a management issue.
Yes, so that's basically saying that repeating my point.
But in what respect was it political?
It was to do with the way in... I'm not using the political in terms of party politics. I just saw that when commercial might have been a better term to use. It's to do with how Fujitsu interacts with Post Office.
Okay, so it obviously doesn't mean high politics.
Oh no, it's to do with the higher level communication between the companies, which was not the sort of thing I like to get involved in if I could help it.
Why was it political in that sense?
Because I think we needed guidance as to how to approach this. As I say, I can't remember any of the details of what the issues were in this particular case, but I think this was another thing that caused Penny to get David Thomas involved, because I think, not David Thomas, David Jones, because that occurred about a week after this, and certainly he was asked about Porters Avenue as well as West Byfleet, and that's why I think this is to do with Porters Avenue.
Political in the sense that we will be giving, or we've been asked to give evidence about the reliability of the system that we're supplying to the post office.
I'm not sure what the issue was to do in this case.
You continue, and I want to ask whether this gives us an understanding of what you meant, that we don't really want to be seen to be undermining a post office prosecution. Firstly, did that represent your state of mind that Fujitsu should not be seen to be undermining post office prosecutions?
Well, I'm not sure that's... I think I needed to get some guidance on that, but there was certainly an example email I've been shown as part of this inquiry where I have actually said, in response to a report that I'd been asked, that I agreed with the defence expert, and Post Office decided to ignore what I'd said.
Can we just focus on the question,
yeah.
please, Mr. Jenkins? Was it your state of mind at the time that you believed that Fujitsu should not be seen to be undermining a post office prosecution?
Well, I was wanting guidance as to what exactly we should be doing.
Why did you need guidance on whether or not Fujitsu should just present the facts, irrespective of whether they supported or undermined a post office prosecution?
I just wanted to get some sort of guidance from senior management as to any communication I had in this area with Post Office. And the guidance I got was to just tell the truth, which is what I would like to have done anyway.
Did you need guidance from management?
I wanted to make sure that I didn't undermine anything.
Did you need guidance from management on whether you should just tell the truth or not?
No, I didn't need guidance. I would just tell the truth, but I just wanted to make sure that I was being covered by my management for any actions that I took.
You needed top cover for telling the truth?
I don't know what to say to that.
Why did you need management guidance on whether or not Fujitsu should be seen to be undermining a post office prosecution?
I just wanted to get some sort of feeling as to how to approach the response to the report.
When you subsequently came to give evidence in the Misra trial,
yes,
very limited questions were asked about your the status in which you were giving evidence and the duties of an expert witness. Agreed?
Agreed.
One of the only things that was asked was, in fact, by the judge. I'm not going to turn it up now. I'm
yeah,
going to read it out. You know the question.
Yes.
Is there any question of your evidence having been influenced by the fact that you're a Fujitsu man? And you said no.
And I stand by that.
If that's the case, why were you asking for management guidance on whether or not the evidence that should be given in response to a defence expert report?
I don't think we're talking about evidence at this stage. It was just a case of comments on a report.
Okay, so comments on a report,
yeah.
A defence expert report.
Yeah.
If your evidence wasn't influenced by the fact that you were a Fujitsu man, why were you seeking management guidance on whether or not, or what should be done if your answers might undermine a post office prosecution?
It was a case of whether my answers should be sent to, my comments on the report should be sent through or not, I suppose. I just cannot remember what the issue was that I was concerned about in this case.
When you gave witness statements and then subsequently asked questions and answered them in court, was a factor operative on your mind the fact that you, on behalf of Fujitsu, should not be seen to undermine a post office prosecution?
No.
Because that's what the politics of the situation demanded.
No, certainly when it came to court, then that didn't come into it. I just wanted to understand what I needed to do about my thoughts on this particular report, which was not at that stage anywhere near a court, as I understood it.
So you're saying that there's a material difference between providing comments on a report in an email chain, on the one hand, where you wouldn't wish to be seen to undermining a prosecution, and then ultimately providing a witness statement when such impure motives would have evaporated?
Yeah, I was just looking for guidance as to what I should be doing in this particular circumstance.
Did you get guidance as to whether or not you should simply set out the facts, irrespective of whether or not they supported or undermined a post office prosecution?
Yeah, I think that was effectively the guidance I got from David Jones the following week.
Can we go forwards, please, to poll 0015-6122? FUJ 0015-6122. Did I say poll? Thank you. And look at page 2, please. We're dealing with a different branch here. Alsford, large debt outstanding. And there's a reference to an email trail below. I'm not going to turn to that. But you say, this is another example of postmasters trying to get away with, quote, Horizon has taken my money. Dave Smith seems to have put me forward as the expert to help on this. How should I respond to his request? Does that reveal what your mindset was in February 2010 when you were conducting investigations into Seema Misra's case and providing witness statements?
No, that is me very poorly trying to summarise what I thought was being laid out in the email trail below. And I apologise for the wording that I used there, but it was me trying to do a crude summarisation of the email trail for management. I don't think I had anything further to do with that particular case.
A lot of people have said that they've used poor words in their emails when they say that what is recorded does not reflect truly what they believed. Did you believe that there were many examples of postmasters trying to get away with Horizon has taken my money?
I can't remember what I believed.
Presumably,
What I was trying to do was summarise the email trail below.
presumably, yes, but you say it's another example of it. Presumably, it does reflect your mind at the time that postmasters were trying to get away with, quote, Horizon has taken my money.
Well, I didn't believe that there was any problems with Horizon that was causing Horizon to lose money.
So you did believe that postmasters were blaming Horizon by saying it's taken my money falsely?
I just wasn't thinking things through properly.
Well, hold on. I think you said that you believed that Horizon was operating correctly, so this would accurately reflect your belief. Postmasters were trying to get away with it by blaming it on Horizon.
I don't think... I think the issues are actually much broader than that. I think the issues are as much to do with the way that the post office was treating the postmasters and the support they were getting and the training they were getting,
Okay.
rather than actually problems with Horizon as such.
Can we move on to poll 00175839? And look, if we scroll down, please. An email from you to Jarnail Singh on the 1st of March in the Seema Misra case. Thanks for the information. I've now read it through. I can summarise. Miss Misra initially identified that the sub-post office was short of cash by about 80 to 90,000. She tried to cover this up while she repaid the losses, which she thought was due to staff theft. 3, by the time of the audit in January 2008, she was £73,000 short, suggesting she had made good about £10,000 of the losses. And when she went to court, she saw an article in Computer Weekly indicating that Horizon was unreliable and decided to jump on the bandwagon.
Again, that's totally inappropriate wording on my part, and for which I apologise.
Well, it seems that rather than Mr. Singh being the originator of the bandwagon phrase, it appears to be you, doesn't it?
No, I was reflecting that from conversations I'd had with other people. It's not a term I would have used myself. The only reason I would have used it here was because I'd heard it being used by others.
Who had...
I can't remember now who it would have been. Possibly Mr. Singh, but I can't say definitively, obviously.
So back to Mr. Singh, perhaps?
Possibly, but I'd say it's not a term I would have used off the top of my head. I was clearly reflecting it that I'd heard it from someone else.
Were you able to approach the task of conducting investigations for the purposes of giving evidence in court, compiling witness statements, and then giving evidence dispassionately? Or
Yes.
were you afflicted by this belief that these were sub-postmasters jumping on a bandwagon which blamed Horizon?
No, I did the analysis conscientiously all the way throughout.
Did you see your role as a Fujitsu man to help prove that Mrs. Misra had jumped on the bandwagon, and that, to use the phrase from the other email, was trying to get away with, quote, Horizon has taken my money?
As I say, I didn't think the problem was within Horizon. I thought there were other reasons as to what had happened, and so my focus was looking at seeing whether there were any problems with Horizon at that point, rather than the broader focus of what the prosecutions were about.
Can we look lastly on this topic just to see whether we find another tell as to what your state of mind was by looking at FUJ 00153115. This is an email of the 15th of June about the Misra case, saying that you had had a call from Professor McLachlan. I'm going to skip over the first 3 or 4 paragraphs. And the penultimate paragraph, you say to Penny Thomas, the good news, that's Professor McLachlan, is looking for problems in people's use of Horizon and not bugs in Horizon as such. Why was it good news that the defence expert was looking at people's use of Horizon and not looking at bugs?
Because that's where I thought the genuine problems were.
Were you pleased that his attention was not on bugs?
Because I didn't think that there were relevant bugs at the time.
Were you worried that if he did divert his attention to the existence of bugs, he may have found some?
No. I was concerned that I would be wasting time looking at other bugs that didn't actually apply in the same way as we'd already discussed with Calendar Square.
You thought that it was a waste of time looking for other bugs? in
Because
legacy
I
Horizon?
didn't think there were relevant bugs to be looked at, because as far as I was aware, the bugs that had occurred within Horizon had been fixed.
That was all based, I think we established yesterday, on assumption and chat.
Yes, but that was still my true belief at the time, and it still is.
I think that's because you reject some of the judge's findings in the Horizon Issues trial.
Yeah. Yes.
Can we turn to the receipts and payments mismatch bug and your treatment of it by looking at poll at 302-9084? And if we scroll down, please. There. I'm afraid it's cut off on the left-hand side of the page. I think we can establish from other evidence that this is the 28th of September, 2010. And you say to Mark Wright, what role did Mark Wright perform?
He was in the SSC.
The attached note summarises the problem. The problem is in the title, Receipts, Payments, Mismatch Issue.
Yes.
And describes what we need to do to identify the full scope of the problem and discuss with Poll if or how we fix the problem. So you're attaching your loss discrepancies note, which we're going to look at in a moment. Yeah. You ask for feedback. You say, we probably need formally to raise this as a problem with the post office. I'm not sure how this is done. We should then plan to do the initial analysis with post office with a view as to scope and then agree how to progress it. Skipping a paragraph, John is easily able to reproduce the problem in a development environment. It's probably worth starting on the data extraction to ascertain the full scope of the issue as soon as possible, since it has probably been around since day one.
By that I meant day one of Horizon Online.
Yes. Yeah. I.e. since January 2010.
Yes. Yeah.
And data more than 6 months old is being dropped from BRSS. Remind us, BRSS?
I can't remember exactly what the acronym stands for, but it was basically a copy of the live transaction database that was used for support purposes.
So this was a relatively time-critical task because the relevant data was being dropped off.
It was being dropped off there. It wasn't being lost altogether. It could still be retrieved using ARQ data or that, but it was available online through the BRSS.
You say so the sooner we run the queries, the better?
Yes.
If data more than 6 months old was being dropped off, would that mean there would be no way of knowing how many branches were affected?
No. And in fact, the way that we eventually decided was the simplest way of identifying it was through events that were being picked up from Sysman and from the databases, and events were being held longer.
So it was still a facility?
Yes.
But in any event, you thought this had probably been around since January 2010?
Yes.
Can we turn, please, to poll 302-8838? A document which I think you'll be familiar
yes.
with which the inquiry has been familiar with for a number of months now. There appear to have been some meetings between Post Office and Fujitsu about the receipts and payments mismatch bug, and this is about one of them. This note was compiled, and you, in your witness statements, try and date this meeting, don't you?
Yes, I can see that there were a number of meetings during the week, and I'm not sure exactly which or whether this was just a summary of the problem based on all the meetings. I don't think I saw this note until 2018.
You were present at this meeting. Can you see that?
I was present at some of the calls that we had during that week. Whether this is a note of a meeting or not is not 100% clear.
If we look at page 3, please. Top paragraph, the receipts and payments mismatch will result in an error code being generated, which will allow Fujitsu to isolate branches affected by this problem, although this is not seen by the branches. We've asked Fujitsu why it's taken so long to react to and escalate issue, which began in May. Did you tell them that the problem began in May?
I can't remember exactly what I said in the meeting. I doubt I would have scoped it in that way.
Because you thought that the problem had been around probably from day one, i.e. January 2010.
Yes, there was a fairly obscure set of circumstances which caused this problem, which is why it only occurred about 60-odd times across what was by then the whole estate of 12,000 branches. So it is quite possible that the first occurrence of the problem was in May, in that none of the branches had actually gone through that particular set of interactions earlier. But if they had gone through that set of interactions before May, then they could have hit the problem. As I say, I can't remember now exactly when the first occurrence was, but that's maybe where May comes from, I don't know.
And it said that that's Fujitsu, will provide feedback on that issue in due course, i.e. we're in October now. Why is it that we're being told about this now?
Yes, and I can't remember the circumstances as to why it was only at this point that the problem had actually been discovered. My first involvement with it, as far as I can remember, was the end of September. So about a week before these calls with Post Office.
The code fixed is mentioned in the next paragraph.
Yes.
And was it the case that at this meeting, or as a result of these communications, Post Office was told that Fujitsu had data from which it was possible to ascertain all of the branches that had been affected?
That is my understanding. We certainly did have that information. We certainly worked out that information at some point. Exactly how that fits in with this meeting or not, I can't remember the exact chronology.
Now, we've seen that you authored a document about correcting accounts for lost discrepancies. If we can look at that, please. It's part of this package of materials at page 6. We'll see, this is your document, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Dated the 29th of September.
Oh, that's right. Most of the other versions I've seen have been dated the 28th of September, so whether it's how that differs, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Probably not materially.
Under the heading Introduction, you discuss some peaks, 765 and 263, and also A64, which is a duplicate of 263. And you ask the question, are these really duplicates? I'm a bit confused as to which one to refer to. Can one be closed as a duplicate of the other? Was that an issue that happened frequently, namely multiple or duplicate peaks, and some were closed in order to keep only one open if possible?
I'm not an expert on the process. You would need to talk to the SSC people about that. But my understanding was that if the same problem was raised from more than one branch, then the approach was to just have one peak that actually controlled the issue, and there was a mechanism within that peak of listing all the branches that were affected by that issue and then closing other peaks as a duplicate, so there was just one peak which could actually sort out the result of the problem.
In the paragraph underneath, just 2 lines from the bottom of it, you say peak 765 is a master peak to record all affected branches.
And that's really what I was trying to say, yes.
There should be a master peak.
There should be a master peak, yes. Because there's no point in investigating the same problem more than once once it's been established that it is the same problem.
Was that something that was always done, i.e. when a problem or issue or bug was reported, there was a system in place to consolidate reports across Fujitsu to collect together all reports relating to that problem into a master peak.
That is what I understood was the way that things should be working. I'm not sure that it always did work in exactly that way, but that was how the process was supposed to work, as I understand it. It wasn't my process.
Over the page to page 7. If we just scroll down, please. At the foot of the page, you say in the box, immediately at the bottom of the page, Mark Wright has produced a list of 16 occurrences of event 903 in the last 30 days. This needs to be extended. What was event 903? Can you remember?
It was the primary symptom of this particular problem. I can't remember the details more than that, I'm afraid. Now.
Mr. Wright, had found 16 occurrences of that problem or symptom in the last 30 days, and that needed to be extended. Do you mean?
So therefore I was saying you need to look back more than 30 days ago. You need to look back at all occurrences of this event going back to January 2010.
And was that done?
Yes.
And how many were eventually detected?
I think at the end we found there were 64 occurrences in 62 branches, but they hadn't necessarily all happened at this point because some of them, the problem continued to occur until the code fix went in about 2 or 3 weeks after this time.
In the report overall, there was an acknowledgement that sub-postmasters may be unaware of the problem because there wasn't essentially a prompt to them to make them aware of it. Is that right?
There wasn't an explicit prompt. If they'd actually looked in detail at the branch trading statement, they would have seen that there was a problem there, but there wasn't a message that actually popped up and said, yes, you've got a problem.
So they would need to examine very carefully a branch trading statement.
There was one figure in there which should always be 0, and in this particular case it wasn't.
If we go over to page 8, please. And at the bottom of the page, please. Under communication with post office, you say, once we have the information above, which will enable us to identify the full scope, we need to communicate this to Post Office Limited through the problem management mechanisms. We then need to get Post Office to agree if and how we should be correcting the data. Why did you think there was a possibility that you might not correct the data?
We didn't correct the data in the branches. What we did was we actually corrected the data in the Post Office's back-end systems.
Post Office should also be able to check up on PolSAP to confirm these discrepancies are still visible, even though they've been lost in branch. It should be noted that as discrepancies are normally losses, then a loss discrepancy would need to work in the branch's favour, so there's no incentive for the branch to report the problem. Also, if we do amend the data to reintroduce the discrepancy, this will need to be carefully communicated to the branches to avoid questions about the system integrity.
And we never did amend the data in the branches.
Yes, but just before you get that answer in too quickly, why would you, if you did amend the data, need carefully to communicate that to the branches in order to avoid questions about system integrity?
Well, I could see that this was an important problem. I didn't want to be amending the data in the branches, and we didn't amend the data.
No, that's a different issue.
If it was badly communicated, it could show that there were serious problems within the ongoing operation of Horizon Online, and we clearly didn't want to do that. So it wasn't a case of covering up. We just didn't want to have bad publicity for what was actually a very isolated problem.
That's not what this says. You wanted to avoid questions about system integrity, didn't you?
That was behind what I was trying to say at the time.
Well, on this document, that's all that was behind what you wanted to say. You wanted to avoid questions being raised about the system's integrity, didn't you?
I didn't think I didn't think there was anything fundamentally wrong, and I wanted to ensure that things were actually communicated accurately.
This isn't about the accurate or inaccurate communication of information to branches. It's about avoiding questions concerning the system's integrity. That's your motive, isn't it?
No, my motive was to make sure that communications were done accurately.
Why didn't you say, if we do amend the data, we must communicate that to the branches accurately?
Perhaps that's what I should have said at the time. But as I say, I wasn't exploring every word that I wrote in an internal document, expecting to be picked apart in the way that's being picked apart now.
Apologies for picking it apart. I'm just trying to work out what was operative on your mind at the time.
Operative on my mind was that we didn't want to blow this out of proportion. This was a relatively small problem that was affecting a very small number of branches, and we didn't want to actually undermine the overall system, which was working perfectly correctly in many branches. And this was a problem that was going to get fixed, and it was easily scoped and identifiable.
At that, you didn't know any of that at this time. You told us that there'd only been a backward look for 30 days. You thought this went back to January,
yes,
rather than May. You didn't know the extent of the problem at all.
But I knew that
a
we
limited problem affecting a small number of branches that was easily fixed. When you were writing this sentence, did you?
I was aware that I had a fairly good idea what the sort of scope was going to be. At this point, we'd identified 16 branches. I could see that we would identify a few further branches. And as I say, the eventual figure was about 60-something.
I'm going to continue the picking apart, if I may. The reason that you use these words was because that's what you were thinking at the time, isn't it? It's not a poor choice of words. It's not a choice of words that was in error. It's not a choice of words that reflects something that you didn't think. You wanted to avoid questions about Horizon systems integrity, didn't you?
I don't think that's true, but...
It's just gone 20 past 12.
Yeah.
Can we break until 25 to, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Ms. Jenkins. Can we continue your evidence by finishing off the receipts and payments mismatch issue and go back to poll 302 8838, please? And can we look, please, at page 2? Can you see, in respect of this meeting, in relation to which you're recorded as an attendee, under the heading Impact at the bottom, if that can be blown up, please. Thank you. Impact branches appeared to balance, whereas in fact they could have gained a loss or they could have had a loss or gain. 2, our accounting systems will be out of sync with what's recorded at the branch. 3, if widely known, could cause a loss of confidence in the Horizon system by branches. Just stopping there at the 3rd bullet point, if widely known, the receipts and payments mismatch bug, could cause a loss of confidence in the Horizon system by branches. You were at this meeting. Did you say that?
I don't know is a simple answer. I don't think so, but I don't know.
Do you recall who did say that?
No, I have no recollection of Whether this was one meeting or a consolidated report of all the meetings, I've no idea. I remember being on conference calls about the issue, but what was said in detail on the conference calls, I have no recollection, I'm afraid.
Was there any face-to-face meeting, as far as you can remember, or were they all conference calls?
There were face-to-face meetings internally within Fujitsu, but in terms of communication with the post office, I think it was all conference calls.
So this list of people we see at the start of this document, which is both post office and Fujitsu, was there ever an occasion when you were all in the same room together discussing it?
I don't believe so.
Right, fine. Yeah.
Was there ever an occasion when you were all on the same call?
I can't remember exactly, say. I thought there was just one call. I've since seen suggestions there were 2 or 3 calls, and I just can't remember the details, I'm afraid.
Was the outcome of the calls an agreement that if the problem was widely known, it could cause a loss of confidence in the Horizon system by branches, as recorded here?
I don't know. My role in these calls was explaining what the issue was technically, not in terms and understanding what it was that was going to be decided in terms of how we fixed it moving forward. That was my main focus.
If a view was expressed in the call or calls, whether by Fujitsu, including you, or by the post office, that if the receipts and payments mismatch bug was widely known, it could cause a loss of confidence by branches in the Horizon system. Did that view as it expressed affect your willingness to mention it in court in the following weeks when you gave evidence?
No, it never occurred to me that it was relevant because, as I said earlier, this was an issue with Horizon Online, and where I was giving evidence was to do with Legacy Horizon.
The next bullet point, therefore, becomes relevant. Potential impact upon ongoing legal cases where branches are disputing the integrity of Horizon data. By this time, I think only 2 branches have been identified, in respect of which there were ongoing court cases, correct?
I'd no idea.
We looked at the report earlier, didn't we? One of them was...
That was in a different context. That was when we were looking back at ARQ data back in June.
By this time, had any court cases been identified?
I don't know. I don't recall any mention of legal cases as part of this discussion. That wasn't where I was focused on. What I was concerned with at this point was the technical aspects of this issue. I have no recollection of discussion of legal implications of this.
What to your knowledge, ongoing legal cases were there?
I wasn't aware of any legal cases involved with Horizon Online at that time.
Well, no, it doesn't say Horizon Online, does it? It simply says ongoing legal cases. You knew about one, didn't you? A big one, Seema Misra's case.
Yes, but I didn't see it as being relevant to that, and I would not have taken it as being relevant in that statement was referring to that at all.
What ongoing legal cases were there concerning Horizon Online?
I don't know. I wasn't aware of any.
Were there? Were there any at all?
I don't know. I don't understand the context of that. I mean, I understand now what the context of that is, but at the time, I wouldn't have known what that was about, and I'm not sure if I'd even have noticed if anyone said anything along those lines.
Did you say that the bug has a potential impact on ongoing legal cases?
No.
Who said that?
I've no idea. I say I don't even remember hearing that being said. It's clearly recorded there in the minutes.
You agree that it's a record in this document of the receipts and payments mismatch bug having a potential impact upon ongoing cases. Given the start date of Horizon Online, you would have known at this time that the likelihood of there being any ongoing legal cases involving Horizon Online was minimal or even zero.
I have no recollection of there being discussion about legal cases as part of these exchanges. I've subsequently seen, as part of the work with the inquiry, that there was discussion along those lines, but at the time, I'm not sure that I would have even noticed that sort of thing being mentioned. I was concerned about the technical aspects of this problem.
And so, if it was discussed at a call or calls that the bug had an impact or potential impact on ongoing legal cases, that wouldn't have affected your willingness or otherwise to mention it in the Seema Misra case?
No, because as far as I was concerned, it was totally irrelevant. Now, if someone had then come and said, I should mention it, I would probably have argued against it, but if they said, no, you've got to do it for legal reasons, then obviously I would have done.
And we know, in fairness to you, that you had disclosed it in your note of the 28th, 29th of September 2010, and we know that that was forwarded to Post Office Legal, John L. Singh.
Yes, I've learned that as part of the work I've done for the inquiry, yes.
The last bullet point, it could provide branches with ammunition to blame Horizon for future discrepancies. Do you recall who said that?
No, I don't, I'm afraid.
Whether that was somebody from Post Office or Fujitsu?
I've no idea, I'm afraid, sorry.
Do you agree that these 3 bullet points taken together seem to reflect a concern about disclosure of the receipts and payments mismatch bug, in that it would have undesirable consequences?
I can understand that now, but as I say, I don't think I was conscious of that sort of discussion as part of the meeting at the time.
Can we go forward, please, to page 3? We can see the solutions. I think you'll be familiar with these.
Yes.
If we scroll down, thank you. Which one did you support?
Where it was sorted out on the back end. So I think that's solution 2, is
Two.
where it gets journaled in PulseApp. And that was the one, I believe, that was eventually done.
The first and the third solution are said to have moral implications. The first because it would involve changing branch data without informing the branch. And the third, moral implications to the integrity of the business. Can you see that?
Yes, I don't remember the term moral implications being used there, but certainly it was... I was always favouring the second option, doing things in the back end, and I felt that was the right way of doing things, and as I say, that was what was eventually done.
The first solution was said to have significant data integrity concerns and could lead to questions of tampering with the branch system and could generate questions about around how the discrepancy was caused. Is that because this would involve Fujitsu manually writing values into branch accounts?
That is how that would have been done, and I was against doing that.
And why were you against doing it?
Because I think it was the wrong thing to do. It was much better to actually sort things out through a business process that was there in the back end of journalising the entries in PulseApp.
That discussion revealed, of course, that the facility was available to Fujitsu, a form of remote access.
I wouldn't call that a form of remote access as such. I think because what we would have had to do was we would have had to develop a specific bit of code to actually make those sort of changes to those affected branches. And so it wouldn't have been using any of the regular remote access type facilities that we had. So it would have been a special bit of code that would have been developed and tested specifically for that purpose. But again, that wasn't the way that we went.
Was consensus reached on that in the meeting?
I can't remember the actual discussion, but it was certainly solution 2 that was done going forward in terms of actually sorting things out at the back end. I can't remember the discussions behind it and how long those discussions were.
Thank you. Can we move on, please, to the evidence that you gave at trial by looking at poll 3002-9406? Can you see this is the 14th of October 2010 at the Crown Court at Guildford? And if we scroll down, it's a transcript of the proceedings.
Yes.
And it's a transcript of your evidence. If we go forward to page 123, please. And just go down at H. The foot of the page, thank you. Re-examination, so that's questions at the end of your evidence session being asked by the prosecution barrister, Mr. Tapford. And he says, are there problems that the sub-postmaster at the post office is going to be unaware of? Can you see that?
Yes.
And you say most problems manifest themselves so they can be visible. So, for example, if there was some problem with balancing and so on, then that I would expect to be investigated to see whether there was an underlying problem as a result of it. The question that you were asked, are there problems that a sub-postmaster at the post office is going to be unaware of? You say most problems manifest themselves so they can be visible.
Yes.
A month earlier, you'd been dealing with a problem that didn't manifest itself in an obvious way to the sub-postmaster.
It did manifest. It was visible. If you actually read through the BTS, there was a non-zero entry in the BTS where there should be a zero entry.
I think you'd said already that that's if you examine them carefully, or yes, a similar phrase. Was your reason for not mentioning that here because that was to do with Horizon Online, and you thought you were answering questions only about Legacy Horizon?
I was certainly thinking I was only talking about Legacy Horizon.
And does that answer apply to across the transcript?
Yes.
That even if questions are asked of you in a broad way, like that one was, which wasn't specifically about Legacy Horizon, you thought you were talking and only talking about Legacy Horizon?
Yes.
Can I turn to the extent to which you were asked to consider wider issues when you were providing your witness statements and giving evidence? And just start by looking at your witness statement, your third witness statement, at page 125. It's just what you say at the end of paragraph 369. The last 4 lines, you're dealing here with the event timeout locking issues. And you say in the last 4 lines, nor have I seen any emails that suggest my raising these event timeout locking issues prompted anyone within Post Office or Fujitsu to ask me to provide a witness statement about any other past problems that had affected Horizon.
Yes.
By that, are you saying that you don't more generally recall being asked to provide a witness statement about any past problems that had affected Horizon?
Yes, I think that's what I'm saying. What I thought I was being asked to look at, and what I think I was looking at, was specific problems at the specific branch, and I found no evidence of any specific problems at the branch. I'd raised with people within Post Office the fact that I was aware of problems that didn't affect that branch, and no one said, oh, in that case you need to talk about it and put it in your witness statement.
You say, therefore, that you don't think you were being asked to provide witness statements or a witness statement about any past problems that had affected Horizon. Can we look back, please, at FUJ 0012 2794? FUJ 0012 2794. And page 2, please. And scroll down. We looked at this email first thing this morning. John L. Singh. And we see that you're copied. And Mr. Singh has said that points 2 to 4 haven't been answered. And 3, when Gareth completes his statement, could he also mention whether there are any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of? So you had been asked that very question.
And I'd responded to it at the time saying that until I looked at the logs I wasn't able to make a clear statement, and then nothing further was actually done about that, so I thought that that had been addressed.
Well, let's break that down. In your witness statement, you said that nobody asked me to provide a statement about any other past problems that had affected Horizon. This is a request to do exactly that, isn't it?
I'd not considered it that way when I was putting together the witness statement.
No, but looking at it now, it's a request to do exactly that, isn't it?
I'd not seen it that way, but yeah, possibly.
So you'd have been asked that question, the broad question of known problems with Horizon, through the lawyer's route, I'm going to call it, Singh to you. Yes?
Yes.
Can we look, please, at FUJ 0015 2902? Page 2, please. Can you see an email, John Longman to Penny Thomas? Yes?
Yes.
On the 1st of February. If we just scroll up, just the bottom of the page there, Penny Thomas to you. Please see below, this is extremely urgent. So you get forwarded this chain. We'll go back to where we were, top of page 2. So Longman to Thomas. I'm going to call this the investigator's route rather than the lawyer's route. At a pre-court hearing today, the judge has ordered that all defence requests be answered. And then Gareth's statement needs to cover the 4 following points. And then do you see 3? When Gareth completes his statement, he should also mention whether there are any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of. If none, could this be clarified in the statement? So in fact, far from what you say in your witness statement that nobody had asked me to provide a statement about any other past problems that had affected Horizon, you were asked that very question twice, weren't you?
But I didn't respond to that either way.
Well, let's just agree you were asked the question twice, weren't you? Once through the lawyer's route and once through the investigator's route.
I'd not considered it in that way.
I know you say that
Yeah.
you hadn't, but the fact of the matter is, rather than you not being asked a question about broader issues or problems with Horizon at all, you'd in fact been asked it twice, once by a lawyer and once through an investigator's email, hadn't you?
It looks like it.
Can we scroll up to what you replied? I finally managed to go through the witness statements, etc. I don't know anything presently about Falkirk. And then I'm not aware of issues in Horizon other than the event timeouts. Not sure how to cover that in the witness statement.
Which is basically the same thing as I said to David Jones later in the week.
Well, firstly, do you agree that that answer there in that third paragraph is your response to the question or the request to cover whether there were any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of?
I think it probably was, yes.
So that's a direct response to the broad question. You were aware of issues in Horizon other than the event timeouts, weren't you?
Not ones that were still outstanding.
Is that what you say?
I'd assumed that as part of the context, but I accept that I didn't spell it out.
The context is framed by the question that you were asked. Are there any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of? That's talking about the operation of legacy Horizon at the very least, isn't it?
I wasn't understanding the question that way, but I can understand that that may have been what was meant.
You say that this answer is supposed to read, I'm not aware of any outstanding issues in Horizon other than the event timeouts which have not been resolved. Why would you not say that if that's the meaning that you now attribute to those words?
I don't know is the simple answer.
That statement there is not true, is it? I'm not aware of issues in Horizon other than the event timeouts.
I was thinking of outstanding issues, but I can accept that I have not qualified it correctly.
So you were asked twice, once by John Longman and once by Jarnail Singh, explicitly to mention any known problems with the Horizon system. Why on both occasions have you applied a restrictive approach rather than simply mentioning all of the problems that you were aware of?
That was not how I'd understood the question, but I accept now that I've misunderstood the question.
Or was it an unwillingness to reveal known problems with Horizon?
I think it was a case of me misunderstanding the question.
Can I turn to the topic, that can come down, thank you. Can I turn to the topic of your knowledge of remote access before Seema Misra's trial? By looking at FUJ 3083737. This is, I think, your fifth witness statement dated the 8th of October 2010. And if we go forwards, please, to page 8. And if we scroll down, please. Yeah, thank you. Oh, no, just back up again so we get the whole of that paragraph. Thank you. You say in section 1.2.3, that's of Professor McLacham's report, there is the hypothesis that external systems across the wider post office operating environment provide incorrect externally entered information to the Horizon accounts through system or operator error outside Horizon. And you say, I was not quite clear what Professor McLachlan was referring to here. In the updated version of the report, he's clarified this by adding, for example, incorrect transaction corrections are submitted from the central systems for acceptance by the sub-postmaster. And you continue, however, in my view, this is not really relevant, since any transaction that's recorded on Horizon must be authorized by a user of the Horizon system who is taking responsibility for the impact that such a transaction has on the branch's accounts. And then this, there are no cases where external systems can manipulate the branch's account without the users in branch being aware of what is happening and authorizing the transactions. That's not correct, is it?
I was referring to the transaction corrections and external systems.
You don't say that, do you?
I do say that external systems cannot manipulate the branch accounts. And the context of the question that I was referring to was to do with transaction corrections, and that's how I was understanding the scope of it.
The month previously, you've been present on a call or calls where, when discussing the receipts and payments mismatch bug, a solution was alteration of figures at accounts, at branch level, the local branch accounts. And that was rejected because it would be done without the sub-postmaster knowing about it, and it therefore lacked integrity.
I don't think that was the only reason it was rejected. I think it was rejected because it was a complicated way of doing things, and it was much simpler to do things at the back-end system.
But didn't that make it clear that external systems could manipulate the branch's accounts without the user being aware?
I wouldn't have called that external systems manipulating accounts. That would have been a specific code change made to actually change the accounts, and it's not something that I would have been in favour of. And that didn't happen.
So wouldn't a full answer here have been, there are facilities for remote access that I've known about since, I think you said yesterday, 2000, which are, in my view, theoretically available to alter branches' accounts. My understanding is they're used infrequently, but that facility is there.
I'd not understood that as being part of the question. I thought we were talking about business as usual. I think in my fourth witness statement I'd talk about business remote access, and that was the context that I was taking this discussion to be in.
Did you in any of your witness statements disclose the other forms of remote access that were possible?
I didn't think they were relevant.
Why did you think they were not relevant?
Because I did not think that those had taken place in West Byfleet.
And therefore there was no necessity to tell the defence or the court about the facility for Fujitsu remotely to alter branch accounts without a sub-postmaster's knowledge.
That was where I was coming from.
Thank you. Sorry, I wonder whether we could take the break there. We're about to change topic.
Yes.
Until 1:55, please. Thank you very much.